Hey everyone, welcome back to our channel. Today we continue the conversation and the journey into data engineering and data science within Microsoft Fabric. I'm your host, Estera, and I'm delighted to have for the second time Misha with me to discuss the top topics for all data scientists. Today we'll talk about how to automatically track our MLFlow runs with Autologging. Misha, super to have you for the second time.
Thanks for having me.
Let's start with overview about Autologging in Fabric. I know that you mentioned about it during the last episode, but repetition is the mother of all learning. So could you repeat what is the Autologging in Fabric and why it's important?
Yeah. So autologging is something that's available through MLFlow. And one of the things that we've done is we've deeply integrated it into the Fabric kind of ecosystem. And so really what it helps with is as part of the data science workflow, right, there's a lot of parameters that you want to keep track of. There's a lot of metrics. You want to remember like the model files, what environments were used. And a lot of times it's pretty cumbersome to manually, log or remember each of these different things that you have to keep track of. So autologging really just helps with this whole process, right? So everything from how you log all the metrics, how log all the parameters, to how do you kind of capture the model and its dependencies if you want to deploy it later on. And so autologging is really, aimed at simplifying some of these workflows. And what we've done is we've kind of enabled it by default in the Fabric runtime.
Doesn't mean that we have to stop with manual logging.
No. So one of the great things about autologging is that it has a lot of different settings in it. And, we'll share some of the settings in a bit. But one of the modes of autologging is what we call the exclusive mode. And so this basically says, sometimes you want the benefits of autologging, right? You don't want to have to remember to log all of these different pieces of information. But you might also have some of these custom things that you want to add yourself. And so you can do both, right? You're not in one, you can't do just one or the other. So the exclusive mode is really the best setting if you want to kind of be in the best of both worlds.
Let's jump to the demo.
In this demo, we'll see how we can use MLFlow autologging within Fabric notebooks. Now, to get started, we simply just need to set the MLFlow experiment name. Next, we want to make sure that autologging is enabled. And so by default, what you'll see is that autologging is enabled by default in Fabric notebooks. If for some reason it's disabled within your workspace or within your notebook, you can simply re-invoke it by calling mlflow.autolog, and it'll reset these settings for you as well. Now, let's take a look at how we can now use autologging within the notebooks directly. And so when autologging is enabled for a machine learning experiment, what it does is it automatically captures various aspects of that experiment without requiring a lot of explicit manual logging statements. And so in this example, we're creating a simple logistic regression model and fitting it to our data set. We head over to the customized columns view, we can see that there's a lot of different metrics and even hyperparameters to choose from. And what you can see when we go back to the code is that we didn't explicitly log or specify these different attributes. This is all captured as part of the scikit-learn framework and how it's integrated with autologging. And this is one of my favorite parts about autologging, is that you don't need to worry about remembering to capture all of these different parameters, all of these different attributes. Each of these things are just automatically done for you and just really simplify some of the workflow, especially when you're kind of going through a quick experimentation workflow. The other thing here is that in addition to the metadata, autologging also captures the model files, certain visualizations, and even the environment files that you'd need to reproduce this model. And if you want to really dig into what's captured for different frameworks, you can go into the MLFlow documentation, and this will basically list out all of the different frameworks and what kind of metrics or parameters and artifacts get logged. So now when we switch back, now let's take a look at another scenario where users are providing their own parameters and metrics. In this example, we see that there's a lot more kind of user-generated inputs that are getting logged. And here I'm just doing this by calling mlflow.logMetric or log parameter. But when the autolog setting is enabled and I'm logging additional things on my own, one of the things that you'll see is that autologging will take what the users provided and put precedence to that. And so here you see just, things like the score and the alpha values. These are attributes that I had only specified in my code. So again, autologging is taking what I've provided as the precedent. Now, in some cases, you might want both, right? You might want benefit of all the additional things that autologging is capturing, but you might also want to log some of your own additional metadata. And so here you can do that by setting MLFlow.autolog and providing the exclusive mode and setting that to false. And so what this gives you is the combined metadata, right? It includes both of your autologged metrics as well as the things that the user is providing themselves. And so this is the example that I have, which we're building off the California housing data set from scikit-learn. We see that as part of my code, I've provided to autologging the additional metrics of the R-squared on the training and test set. I've also provided some metadata or some additional commands to log the root mean squared error, as well as some additional parameters. And so one of the things that you'll see, right, is that when you go into the customized columns view, you'll see a lot of different attributes that are provided. And again, I didn't call all of these. I didn't say to go log, say, the training scores, right? These are things that autologging is automatically captured. But in addition to what autologging is captured, I can also see things like the R-squared on the train and test, which is what I provided in my code. So you can see this setting is really the combination of what you want, what you wanted to customize, but in addition, the things that autologging is automatically capturing for you. And so a really great setting to kind of remember and be able to use when you're going through your data science workflow. Now, the last part is, in some cases, you might want to also disable your autologging capabilities. Typically you want to disable this when there are user-defined statements that you really want to give precedence to, or you just want to be able to control the whole experiment tracking experience. This is also necessary in certain scenarios where autologging might interfere with a specific use case or specific set of parameters you want to log and how you want them logged. In other cases, for larger scale experiments, autologging might introduce some overhead. And so you can kind of accelerate or reduce some of this overhead by disabling autologging. And so here I can simply do that by just setting disable equal to true. And so from the code, we see that some of the values that I had logged include the R-squared test and train, and as well as the root mean squared error. And so when I actually go back into my customized columns view, you can see that these are the only 3 metrics that are available. Now, typically when autologging is disabled, the behavior is that MLFlow will not automatically capture, right, the metrics, the parameters, the artifacts. And so if you want to capture all of these pieces of metadata, you need to manually provide all of this information by saying things like mlflow.log parameter or log metric like we see here. In other cases, maybe you don't want to just disable it, print the notebook. Maybe you want to disable it all up for your Fabric workspace. And so you can do that by going into your workspace settings, the data science tab, and the automatic log tab right here. And then you can just disable this. And what this will do is it'll just make sure that autologging is not enabled by default for all the notebooks in your workspace. And so, you can really use autologging in different ways, and it really depends on how you want to tailor it for your specific workflow.
It looks that I can fully customize logging behavior. What are the limitations here? What are the caveats?
Yeah, so the main thing to highlight is, MLFlow works across many different machine learning frameworks. So things like GPM, XGBoost, scikit-learn. And so each of these frameworks integrates with autologging in a slightly different way. And so the best way to kind of know what you should expect to be logged for each framework is just to head over to the MLFlow docs. And that will outline the different metrics that you should expect to see, what kind of additional files are logged. So in the case of some of the scikit-learn examples, sometimes you'll see additional confusion matrices logged, which are really helpful, but it's not for every framework, right? And so that's the best way to kind of understand what you can expect to see logged across all of these different options that you have.
It sounds that there can be specific cases when we may have to disable autologging. How to do that?
Yeah, there are a few different ways you can do that. And so in some cases, you just might want to disable it for a specific notebook. And so it's really easy, at the start of your notebook session, you can just write mlflow.autolog and disable is true. So a very simple example of how you can just disable it for one specific notebook session. In some cases, across your workspace, you might say, hey, autologging, I just prefer to do all of the logging by myself. And so you can disable it at the workspace level by going into your workspace settings, the data science tab, and there should be a tab where you can disable that. And what this does is it'll disable it by default for all of the notebooks within that workspace. And so, two options that you can have if you prefer to log everything yourself.
Good to have this option, but I'm happy
Yeah.
that it's enabled by default. So everything what we are doing with our models is reflected
Yes,
and
exactly.
allowing us to repeat the experiment.
Yep, exactly. I think one of the other cool things about autologging, right, is it really simplifies the process if you're, thinking about how do you want to package this model to say use for predict. Everything gets packaged for you off the bat, and so it's part of the MLflow framework. But you don't have to worry about is all the right information logged? Did you register the model? Did you save the model properties? And so all of this really helps in just kind of simplifying how things can be used downstream as well.
Misha, do you have any customer case when autologging played a crucial role?
Yeah, we've seen a lot of cases for customers where, they have a lot of maybe, data scientists that want to quickly come in and prototype different models. They don't want to spend a lot of time thinking about the data science code of how, they're going to log every specific parameter input. And so autologging has been great for these kinds of users. We've also seen other users where maybe they're not, expert data scientists. They can be analysts that are familiarizing themselves with MLflow, with how to create and train models. And so autologging really helps simplify their process as well, because they can just come in, they can focus on training the model, and all the insights that might be relevant for that model are kind of automatically captured. So just kind of helps simplify their learning process and machine learning as well.
So it's the first step to MLOps.
Yes, exactly.
Some time ago, we recorded the Espresso video with Kishao, who introduced VS Code. And he presented that basically whatever we can do in notebooks through Fabric Studio, we can do that as well through VS Code, either the application or the web version of it. If, as a data scientist, I'm running my experiments, and auto-logging is enabled on the workspace level, and I'm using VS Code, will that work?
Yeah, good question. So we have some work that's planned to actually enable that cross workspace logging. So if you're in VS Code, you want to be able to log to your centralized Fabric repo. So there's some work to kind of enable that, just to stitch together so that works. But once that's enabled, everything from auto logging to being able to track all of your MLflow models, that should be enabled once we have that feature released.
I love also the idea of samples. Do we have any sample that our viewers can just try and see auto-login in action?
Yeah, that's a great question. If you head over to the AI samples tab in the data science homepage, you'll see a bunch of different samples. And for the most part, most of those should be enabled with auto logging. So as you're training models, you'll see the whole inline authoring experience that automatically shows you all the different metrics that are getting logged. And so definitely play around with those, try it out. You can also, customize some of the auto logging behavior in those samples if you want to say, hey, I also want to try logging this new parameter. Definitely try it out, and we'd love to hear your thoughts and feedback on that.
Fantastic. So now the last question, my favorite one. What are the resources for new users, potential data scientists who want to try it, who want to dive deeper into the capabilities of autologging?
Yeah. We have a bunch of different samples online. If you go to any of the training documentation or tutorials that we have on MS Docs, you'll be able to walk through a whole training example and really just, familiarize yourselves with how to use MLflow and the different capabilities there. The other great thing is, if autologging is enabled by default, you can really take any training notebook. It doesn't have to be through our docs. It can be something that you found online, and you can run it through Fabric, and you can basically see how autologging helps capture some of those results. And so all you have to do is just import MLflow, and the rest is kind of taken care of for you.
Super. Can't wait to try it on my own and run some experiments. So, Misha, thank you so much for
Thank you.
being here and sharing all your knowledge. For those who are watching us, please remember to hit the like button, leave the comment, subscribe the channel, and see you for the next time. And until that time, happy autologging. See you.
Thanks all. Bye.